nice enough to join us right now on the Labatt Blue Light Hotline. He covers Boston sports for 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's the co-host of the Patriots Catch-22 podcast. Every once in a while, nice enough to join us here on The Drive, and that's our friend Alex Barth. Alex, how are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, guys?
We're excellent. Busy time in some Boston sports. And before we get to your Patriots on the day of the trade deadline, let's talk a little bit about the Boston Red Sox. What were your thoughts on the Red Sox, the whole president position, and who they ended up with?
So I think of the options they had, Craig Breslow made the most sense. I like that they got a former player. I think that was important. You could really see in real time the disconnect between the roster and the clubhouse and how that was kind of weighing on guys. So Chaim Bloom just did not relate to the players, and it was a problem. That being said, Chris Cotillo of Mass Live wrote a really good piece on this, basically saying the search is more about who said no than who said yes.
Right.
Could Craig Breslow work out? Yeah, and he's got a background in pitching, and that's good and all that, but Dan Kennedy said people who run baseball office are going to want to come to Boston. They didn't. And I think Red Sox ownership needs to take a long look in the mirror and realize why that is. Because if they repeat the same mistakes with Chaim Bloom, Craig Breslow is going to be out of here in 3 years. They're going to be in the same spot, and probably even less people will want to come work for them. So I'm fine with Breslow. I don't think he's a bad hire, but he's not the best hire because the best hires don't want to come here. And with a franchise like the Red Sox, the best hires should want to come here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's a concerning thing to see as a fan base, given where this roster is going into a very important offseason. But regardless if it was Craig Breslow, if it was Sam Fuld or Brandon Gomes or whoever ended up taking that job, what does the job look like in front of them this offseason, and how aggressive do you anticipate the Red Sox being in trying to turn this thing around?
Well, that's the big question. It goes to sort of what I just talked about. Did ownership learn their lesson from the Chaim Bloom era or not? Because if they didn't, I think it's more the same. Chaim Bloom's the fall guy. They moved on from him, and it's still going to be, metaphorically nibbling at the corners when it comes to free agency. Sign 10 pitchers for 1 year, $10 million, hope 2 or 3 of them pan out, spend half the season trying to figure out who that is. They won't be in on Ohtani. They won't be in on any of the big names. Ugh. If they're going to let Breslow go for it, I think with his background in pitching and with the prospects they have, I think they probably heavily attack additions on offense, heavily attack additions in the lineup, and then try to get some of these younger pitchers expedited through the system to build that thing up. Maybe they add an arm or two here or there, but not necessarily. I think the folks would be more on the offensive side of the ball.
Alex, all right, let's move over to the hockey side of things and on the ice. A little surprised that the Bruins have started out so hot at 8-1?
A little bit, just because, they lost so much this offseason, but this is what they've been. They win regular season games. They're an elite regular season team. They've been that for a long time, and I think the team culture, just the effort they play with night in and night out, you don't see that around the league, and it allows them to steal some of these games. It's great to see, but you also remember how last year ended, and it cast this kind of weird cloud over it that, this is great, they're 8-1, that's awesome, but what's different from last year, right? And maybe it's Matthew Poitras, who they announced today is going to stay in the NHL, and I think that's a good sign, but I hate to be the guy that's like, all right, well, do it in May and June, or I don't care. But that's kind of where I'm at with them. It's like, this is great, this is fun, awesome. We're going to have a hockey playoff in Boston. We love that. I'd love it even more if it went passed around.
That's true. That's fair. We've got it's been to get into the playoffs and then hold your breath for a while now with this group.
Right,
but
and I'm not sitting here saying they can't do it either. I mean, of course they can, and I think Brad Marchand's done a great job taking over captain, but it's just I think Bruins fans are a little apprehensive of okay, I've seen this before. Hold on tight. Here we go.
No, exactly. It's not like you went in this offseason after disappointing last year and brought in McDavid or something, and all of a sudden now your group is so much better than it was. But you got to like the impact of the youngster in Poitras. Does he look? I know he looks legit so far, but how does he look in terms of what he could possibly do down the road for this group? Does he look like an impact player long term?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because he's already so fully developed. this point. Like you wouldn't know he's 19 looking at him like technically.
Right.
And that's not to say he's a perfect player. He still has a lot of his game he needs to round out, but there's a reason you don't see that many 19-year-olds in the NHL. The big question with him, to me, he's going to need to add size. I don't think he has an NHL body yet.
Okay.
And then when he does that, like, where's his game at? But no, he's fairly advanced for his age.
All right, well, we can't let the Celtics be left out before we get to the Patriots, Alex. Celtics right now start the season off. 3 good wins for them, and obviously Joe Mazzulla is going to have a little bit more pressure on him as they made some big moves to try to bring an NBA championship back to Boston. What do you think so far, and do you think that's a realistic expectation for this season?
I think it has to be. They've come so close the last couple of years. I think it has to be title or bust. They made the moves this offseason that I thought were very short-term focused moves, which is fine, being short-term, but that's because they should be winning a title. You know, it's not – we're done with Tatum and Brown and Young. We're done with that. And that doesn't mean that they're old or they're getting worse, but, like, these guys are veterans in this league. These are guys that have been in this league. They haven't won at the highest level, but every level but. So the expectation absolutely should be title or bust. The one thing, and I was kind of down on their offseason and seeing how it's played out the first few games, I'm a lot more optimistic than I was. The one question, though, of course, is going to be health. And you have Porzingis, who has a history of injuries. Jaylen Brown has a history of injuries. We'll see what happens with Jason Tatum. 2 other important players, Al Horford, Drew Holiday, are in their mid to late 30s. So where are those guys at physically? And that's just going to be something we see over the course of the season. The thing about getting off to a hot start, if they can keep this going, is if you're in good shape, playoff position-wise, by the time you get to, St. Patrick's Day, right, start of spring, you maybe have a little more wiggle room to rest some guys heading into the playoffs. And I think it would be great if they have that opportunity. So a hot start's good, but health is going to be the biggest thing to watch with this team between now and the playoffs.
Well, I'll tell you what, with Porzingis there, this team looks like it is absolutely fire. So if they could stay healthy, my gosh, they are going to be one big handful in the NBA playoffs. All right, we're hanging out with our...
I mean, my thing with adding Porzingis when they did it was I felt that although it looked a little different, like my biggest issue with them last year, and I don't think I'm alone in this, was they were live and die by the 3. They were a one-trick pony. It was a really, really good trick, but when the 3s weren't falling, they didn't have another way to win a game. And I felt like coming into this year, would that change? Like, it's a taller house of cards, but it's still a house of cards if the 3s don't fall. What Porzingis has given them in the paint, I was not expecting that. And if he can be, they've been on offense and defense, one of the best teams in the paint this season to start the year. If that's sustainable, it changes everything, because now when the 3s aren't falling, you can start attacking the inside, collapsing the defense, and then get yourself easier looks. So that's the biggest development for me. I know people talk about, he's 7'5", and he's shooting 3s, and look at, the way he defends on the perimeter, and Drew Holiday is guarding 4s. Like, no, to me, they are dominating in the paint. And I know that's a little archaic, but I think that down the road, that is going to be very, very important that they have that trick in their bag.
100%, because that's how you win the NBA playoffs.
Right.
That's how you win an NBA championship. And Porzingis totally changes this team 100%. All right, we're hanging out with our guy, Alex Barth. He covers, as you can hear, all of Boston sports for 98.5, the Sports Hub. He's the co-host of the Patriots Catch 22 podcast. And you can certainly follow him on Twitter at @TheRealAlexBarth.
All right, Alex, let's go over to that Patriots group, and we as a New York station and an affiliate of the Buffalo Bills were kind of taken aback by what we saw a week ago when they played the Patriots. Now, the Patriots kind of come back to earth in their game against the Dolphins. Did you have any different expectations for what this Patriots team could do going into Miami coming off of that Buffalo game, or was that just a flash in the pan to you?
Well, I mean, divisional football is always weird, and it was like, okay, well, you could get 2 games in a row. Is it going to be 2, divisional games in a row? But the biggest thing for the Patriots, I mean, this goes back to Cam Newton, is consistency.
Right.
You've seen flashes from this team a couple times this season. I mean, the Cam Newton year, you had that Seattle game, right, where he throws for whatever was 300-something, 400 yards. They finished under 500. The start to the 2021 season, they had moments, even last year in the Matt Patricia year. They were 7-9. They had their moments. So they've been able to flash like this. Now, it hasn't been against Buffalo. That was notable. But I also think this Bills team is as weak as a Bills team has been in the last three, basically in the Sean McDermott era, right? Or since Josh Allen turned the corner in his third season. This is as weak as they've been. But they do put together complete games here and there. So was I surprised it came against the Bills? Yes. But it wasn't surprising to be like, okay, this was just one of the games where they show up.
And now they have an easier part of the schedule with the Commanders and then the Colts and the Giants coming up. What team do you expect to see?
It's so tough, right? I think the Commanders are a team they should be able to beat. Right. That's one of those things like, they beat the Jag. I don't know if they can put up 50, but like they beat the Jaguars by 50 and 21. And you had that whole stretch where the only starting quarterback they beat in a span of like 10 wins was Jared Goff. It's tough because the defense is banged up, but if the defense can play like it did against Buffalo, I think they can beat the Commanders. Indy, who knows? Because the Colts are also super inconsistent. That game's in Germany. That's going to be super weird. I would think these games will be competitive just because I think the roster talent's comparable, but I think the Patriots give it their best shot, but we'll see because there's so many games like they get blown out by Dallas, right? Yeah. And then the next week, you're like, well, they're definitely going to respond. That's an embarrassing loss. They're going to respond. And then they get blown out again. So it's a little tough to predict with this team.
Now, with the deadline happening today, Alex, I'm sure every fan that you would talk to of this team would say, well, yeah, I'd want the whole roster to be traded if I got the chance to. But do you foresee anything changing, either minor or even major, with this group by the time we hit 4 o'clock?
I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe make one or two trades. I don't think they're going to buy. There's a report out there as we're recording this that Ezekiel Elliott might be on the move. Teams are calling about Ezekiel Elliott. So that's a guy I could see them moving. Josh Uche is a guy I think makes a lot of sense. But I don't think anything major. You're not going to get the fire sale that I know a lot of fans want. And that's not even a Belichick thing. It doesn't happen in the NFL. You don't see teams at the trade deadline trade off 5, 6, 7 players. You rarely see that in the offseason, frankly. The Cardinals did it this year, and everybody was like taken back by it. So maybe they trade one or two players to pick up a couple of picks, but I don't think you see anything major. I don't think they're trading away a guy like Mac Jones. I think it's just contract year guys that they probably know they're not going to extend, that they move for. If they get lucky, a day 2 pick, if not, probably day 3 picks.
All right, Alex, looking at the rest of the season with this team, what are the best? What do you need to come out of this season to go into the offseason feeling like it's going in a good direction? And if they continue and win maybe 4 or 5 games, is Bill Belichick out?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? There's the talk of the extension, but nobody knows what the extension really is. You have people saying, it doesn't change anything, but then what was the point of the extension? So I don't know that as weird as it sounds, I don't know that the win-loss total impacts Belichick's job as much as the trajectory of the team. What I mean by that is, like, if they win 5 games, but ownership establishes they need a new quarterback, I don't know how you give Bill that chance when he's missed on quarterbacks the last few tries versus if they win 2 games, but it's, hey, we're going to give it another year with Mac Jones. Right. Maybe that Bill sticks around because you don't need to make that quarterback change, and clearly they believe in his vision if they believe in Mac Jones. So I think it's all intangible at this point. I don't, if they lose out, he's probably done just because that would be, you're talking about double-digit losses in a row, I think. But I don't think that there's like this magic number of like, all right, 5 wins he's out, 6 wins he's safe. I think there's going to be a lot more context that goes into it than just that record.
Do you feel the fan base is like they're sick of it?
I don't think all of them. I do still think there's a very dedicated group of Bill Belichick supporters, but it certainly feels like the majority has swung towards, all right,
enough.
Some with more vitriol than others, but it feels like the majority of the fan base has swung towards, all right, it's time for the next guy.
Yeah, it really does seem that way, that it is time. He is our guy, Alex Barth. He covers Boston sports for 98.5, the Sports Hub. He's the co-host of the Patriots Catch 22 podcast. You can certainly follow him on social media at Real Alex Barth. And every once in a while, he's nice enough to join us here on the drive. Alex, awesome, dude. Really appreciate your time on a really, really busy day. And we'll talk to you down the line when we see really what the Patriots season is going to be.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.